Hi, I'm Daryl Aldrich, and I'm a Regional EHS Specialist for Iberdrola Renewables.
And I'm Brad Goodenough, Technician here at Klondike.
Today, we're going to talk about the Iberdrola Renewables Lockout Tagout program.
The LOTO training video is divided into 4 parts. Part 1, Introduction and Scope. Part 2, Definitions. Part 3, Applying and Removing Simple LOTO. Part 4, Applying and Removing Permit LOTO. Part 1, Introduction and Scope. Iberdrola Renewables has a written process which is intended to protect people who are working on or around equipment by preventing the inadvertent startup of this equipment or the unexpected release of energy. This process is called Lockout Tagout, or LOTO, and is to be used to de-energize equipment, render that equipment inoperative, and prevent the inadvertent energization or startup of that equipment. The primary use of this process is to protect people who are working on equipment. However, it may also be used to prevent the release of energy which could harm the environment or equipment itself. LOTO is an administrative control and, if properly utilized, will be a barrier between people and potential hazards which may exist. For LOTO to be an effective barrier, 2 things must occur. First, people must use it to protect themselves from the hazards, and second, those people who use LOTO must use it correctly. To ensure correct use, personnel will receive training on the LOTO program. Iberdrola employees receive training on this program annually, and visitors to the plant who will be protected by the Iberdrola LOTO receive Level B safety orientation, which trains them to a level where they can be an affected employee. In both cases, knowledge needs to be tested to demonstrate that personnel using LOTO understand the process. The Iberdrola LOTO program is used to protect personnel who conduct work on or around equipment at an Iberdrola electric generating plant. This means that Iberdrola employees and visitors will be protected by the Iberdrola LOTO process, and contractor employees may be protected by the Iberdrola LOTO or their own company's LOTO process. The plant manager or designee will determine which LOTO process will be used by the contractor prior to work beginning. The contractor LOTO process may be used if it is determined to be effective at protecting the contractor personnel and the contractor employees have been trained to use it. Prior to the plant manager allowing a contractor to utilize their own LOTO for a system, he or she needs to ensure that the contractor has knowledge of that system. For example, if a crane operator was performing work on a piece of equipment that needed to be shut down, rendered inoperative, and LOTO applied prior to the work beginning, it is not reasonable to expect that the crane operator would have the depth of knowledge to appropriately de-energize and apply LOTO to that equipment. So in this case, the manager would choose to have the crane operator be protected by the Iberdrola LOTO. Conversely, if an original equipment manufacturer, OEM, were to come to the plant to perform some work on a wind turbine, and the plant manager had determined that their LOTO program is effective and the OEM's employees were knowledgeable of the LOTO program and the turbine, then the plant manager could allow the OEM employees to be protected by their LOTO program. Part 2, Definitions. Zero energy is the state of a piece of equipment or system when it has been isolated from all sources of energy and all stored energy has been removed. A typical method for verifying zero energy for an electrical circuit is to verify an absence of voltage by performing a hot-cold-hot check with a voltmeter. Affected employee is an employee who is being protected by a LOTO. These are people who may be working on or around equipment which has an Iberdrola LOTO applied and is being protected from the inadvertent release of energy by that LOTO. In order for these affected employees to be adequately protected, they must receive training on LOTO and demonstrate that they understand the process. Iberdrola provides a safety orientation for people who will be working at the plant, and LOTO training is given during this orientation. An exam is given after the training so that visitors can demonstrate understanding. Also, when an affected employee is protected by an Iberdrola LOTO, They are guided through the process by an authorized employee to ensure they are doing the things they need to do to be adequately protected. An authorized employee is an employee who may develop, administer, and apply an Iberdrola LOTO. This includes determining the proper method to isolate the equipment or system, in other words, which energy isolating devices to manipulate, applying or removing lockout devices and tagout devices from those energy isolating devices, performing a second check verification of the proper application of the lockout devices and tagout devices, verifying zero energy of the circuits or systems, and ensuring the administrative portion of the LOTO is performed accurately and completely. This means filling out the proper information on the permit and tags. An authorized employee is also responsible to assist affected employees by ensuring they understand how the LOTO is protecting them. In other words, the energy isolating devices have established a barrier between the person working on the equipment and the energy sources. The authorized employee will also ensure the affected employee has properly signed onto the LOTO permit and applied their personal lock to the lockbox. In order for a person to become an authorized employee for an Iberdrola LOTO, they must be an Iberdrola employee. They must have demonstrated substantial knowledge of the equipment or the system being LOTO'd through the completion of qualifications, must have been assessed while performing LOTO to demonstrate proficiency with the process, and their name must have been placed on the list of authorized employees by the plant manager or designee. The criteria that must be met to become an authorized employee can be found in paragraph 3.6 of the Iberdrola LOTO program in the EHS manual. An energy isolating device is a physical device that prevents the transmission of energy and also has a visible indication of its position. Examples of energy isolating devices are circuit breakers, disconnect switches, slide gates, valves, blind flanges, and fuses. Devices which are not considered energy isolating devices are push buttons, momentary switches, and control circuit type devices. A tagout device is an approved tag and a means of attaching that tag to an energy isolating device. This could be a tie wrap or hasp or other device used to attach the tag. The tagout device needs to indicate that the energy isolating device it is attached to shall not be operated until the tagout device is removed. Here at Iberdrola, we have designed the tags that will be used for both simple and permit LOTO. The tags are interchangeable for each of these types of LOTO. The tags have a space to insert the appropriate information, which, if done properly, will result in the tagout devices being singularly identifiable. The website has a page that indicates where the tags can be purchased from and also has a template to use when printing the tags. A lockout device is a device which uses positive means to hold an energy isolating device in the LOTO'd position. A lockout device always includes an equipment lock and may include a hasp, a chain or cable, and/or other LOTO adapter. If an energy isolating device has the ability to accept a lock, then a lockout device must be used with the tagout device. If an energy isolating device does not have the ability to accept a lock, then an adapter must be used so that the lockout device can be used with a tagout device. If an energy isolating device does not have the ability to accept a lock, develop an adapter which shall be used so that a lockout device is used with a tagout device. If no adapter can be developed, then only a tagout device may be used on the energy isolating device. Employees should use every effort to ensure lockout devices are being used during LOTO. Lockout devices and tagout devices needs to be singularly identifiable. This means that when you see these devices which are associated with a simple LOTO, you should be able to determine that it is a simple LOTO, and you should be able to determine who applied those devices and when. This also means that if these devices are associated with a permit LOTO, you should be able to determine which permit LOTO the devices are associated with, who applied the devices, who second checked the devices, and the LOTO'd position of the energy isolating device. Lockout devices and tagout devices need to be capable of withstanding the environment to which they are exposed for the maximum time they are exposed. These devices need to be standardized within the facility in color, shape, and size. Also, print and format of the tagout devices need to be standardized. An equipment lock is the lock component of a lockout device and is applied to an energy isolating device or an adapter which has been applied to an energy isolating device and is always accompanied by a tagout device. Equipment locks are applied by authorized employees only, are to be individually keyed, and master keys shall not be available for these locks. If an authorized employee is applying a simple LOTO, their personal lock becomes the equipment lock. A personal lock is a lock that is applied to a lockbox or the hasp of a lockout device by an affected employee for their own personal protection. Personal locks may only be applied or removed by the affected employee who is assigned that personal lock under normal conditions. Only the affected employee who the personal lock is assigned to may possess a key for that personal lock. It should be noted that during application of a simple LOTO, a personal lock may also be an equipment lock, and in this case, it may not be individually keyed. It should be noted that the affected employee shall be the only person who has access to the keys to their personal lock. A lockbox is a box that is used to store the keys of equipment locks which are being used as part of a LOTO. The lockbox provides a location for affected employees to apply their personal locks in such a manner that prevents access to the keys for the equipment locks until each affected employee has removed their personal lock. A control lock is a lock that is only used on a lockbox, and its purpose is to prevent access to the keys of the equipment locks which are stored inside. Control locks are only applied and removed by the authorized employees and are never allowed to be used for protection of affected employees. Keys for control locks shall be maintained by authorized employees. Control locks shall be uniquely identified, keyed individually, and master keys shall not be available for these locks. There are times at an Iberdrola plant where contractors are performing work on turbines, and the need may arise for these personnel to be able to provide the second check, which is part of the Iberdrola Renewables LOTO. During these cases, the plant manager may want to deem a contractor employee as an authorized contractor employee. The LOTO procedure outlines the process for doing this as well as the following discussion. In order for a contractor employee to become an authorized contractor employee, they must demonstrate significant knowledge of the system in which they will become authorized. To document this, the plant manager shall develop and administer a written examination so that the contractor employee can demonstrate that he or she possesses significant knowledge of the system in which they will become authorized. Additionally, the contractor shall receive training on the Iberdrola LOTO program and be assessed while participating in the application of the Iberdrola LOTO to ensure they are proficient with this program. The LOTO program outlines the specific items that the contractor employee needs to be assessed on. When the plant manager is satisfied that the contractor employee has demonstrated significant knowledge with the system and proficiency with the Iberdrola Renewables LOTO, the manager may place the contractor employee's name on the list of authorized contractors for the system in which the knowledge was measured. A copy of the written examinations and documented assessment for each contractor employee whose name appears on the list shall be placed in the plant LOTO binder behind this list. The plant manager shall retest and reassess contractor employees on an annual basis or remove the contractor employee's name from the list. Finally, the only roles that an authorized contractor employee may perform regarding the Iberdrola Renewables LOTO is the second check verification of proper placement of lockout and tagout devices and initialing this action on the tags and permit.
Now that we have learned several important definitions used in the Iberdrola Renewables LOTO program, let's start getting into the nuts and bolts of actually applying a LOTO. The first step we need to take is to determine which of the two types of LOTO we will need, simple or permit.
Part 3. Applying and removing simple LOTO.
A simple LOTO is a type of LOTO specifically designed to protect authorized employees only. Therefore, it is not to be used when non-authorized employees or contractors may be exposed to hazards. A simple LOTO is when an authorized employee places their lockout and tagout devices on an energy isolating device with no LOTO permit being used. In this case, only the authorized employee who applied the LOTO is protected by the LOTO that they personally applied. For a simple LOTO, only the person who applied the lockout device and tagout device may remove them. To summarize, you must be an authorized employee to apply simple LOTO, and that LOTO only protects you. Because of this, others are not allowed to be protected by your simple LOTO or to remove it. When the simple LOTO requirements cannot be met, a permit LOTO must be used. This means you must use a permit LOTO whenever people who are not authorized employees must be protected. Additionally, permit LOTO must also be used whenever LOTO needs to be applied to a system or piece of equipment which operates at or above 1000 volts. To properly apply and administer a permit LOTO, you will need either 2 authorized employees or 1 authorized employee and 1 authorized contractor employee. Now that we understand the 2 different LOTO types and have determined which type of LOTO to use, simple or permit, let's gather up all of the information we have learned so far and go step by step through each of these 2 procedures. We will begin with the approved procedure that an Iberdrola Renewables authorized employee uses to develop and apply a simple LOTO. First, the authorized employee needs to figure out what needs to be LOTO'd. To do this, he or she will need to perform a review of the work to be done, reference known accurate drawings, and determine the appropriate energy isolating devices which should be used to isolate the equipment or system from all sources of energy. It is critical here that the authorized employee takes the time to carefully identify all potential sources of energy and make sure they are isolated so that everyone who might be exposed to these hazards can know that they are being protected. Next, the employee will prepare the lockout devices and tagout devices which will be used with this simple LOTO. The authorized employee should then think about any energy which may be stored in the system and then determine the appropriate method for removing this stored energy and verifying that it is no longer stored. This is referred to as verifying zero energy. The authorized employee will then shut down the equipment in accordance with the operating procedures for that equipment.
All right, Brad, I'm going to open up CD8. Are you clear? Clear.
The authorized employee will then manipulate the energy isolating devices to the desired LOTO position. This is the position which isolates the system from the source of energy. The authorized employee will then apply the tagout devices and the lockout devices onto the energy isolating devices.
Applying my simple LOTO on CD8. Copy that. Marking simple LOTO.
Which were manipulated in the previous step.
Putting my name.
The authorized employee will print their name and date on the tag and check the box labeled Simple LOTO. Finally, the authorized employee will use the methods determined earlier in the procedure to verify zero energy.
All right, Brad, doing hot, cold, hot. Okay. All right, I got heat. Hot. All right, now we're going cold. Cold, 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 good, hot, hot. Sounds good.
At this point, the authorized employee will be protected from the inadvertent release of energy and may begin work on the equipment.
Hands in place, I'm going to take my LOTO off. Okay, all work's done? All work's done.
When the authorized employee who applied the simple LOTO is done performing the maintenance on the piece of equipment and it is safe to return that equipment to service,
Tag is off. Re-energizing clear.
the authorized employee may remove the lockout and tagout device from the energy isolating device and may then manipulate the energy isolating device to the desired operating position. The authorized employee may then start the equipment in accordance with the equipment operating procedures.
All right, Brad, let's start this bad boy up. All faults clear, hit start.
The authorized employee should then discard the tags that were used for the Simple Lotto.
Like a happy customer.
Just remember, Simple Lotto is used to protect individual authorized employees only.
Part 4. Applying and removing permit lotto.
When a permit lotto is required, an authorized employee must use the following approved procedure. First, perform a review of the work to be done, reference known accurate drawings, and determine the appropriate energy isolating devices which should be used to isolate the equipment or system from all sources of energy. The authorized employee will then prepare a lotto permit, which is Appendix A of the written lotto program, the tagout devices, and the lockout devices which will be used with this permit as follows. The authorized employee will need to obtain a lotto permit number. This can be accomplished by filling out the permit lotto log sheet, which is Appendix E of the lotto program, and taking the next available number. Write the lotto permit number on each page of the permit in the spaces provided. Write the date on each page of the permit. If a lockbox is being used for this particular permit lotto, write the ID of the lockbox on each page of the permit. If no lockbox is used, place NA in these locations. Next, if a lockbox is being used, write down the control lock ID on each page of the permit. If no lockbox will be used, place NA in these locations. Next, write down the plant name on the permit in the space provided. Now, write down the system on the permit in the space provided. The system could include the wind turbine generator number, the substation, or the transformer identifier that is being worked on. Now, write down the reason for the lotto on the permit in that space that is provided. The reason could be for preventive or corrective maintenance, replacement of parts, or any other task which needs the equipment rendered inoperative. On the permit, document the type of energy hazard present by circling each one that applies. If an energy hazard is present which is not identified on the permit, write the type of hazard on the permit in the space labeled Other. Next, write down the tag number of each tag that will be used in the lotto. Any number can be used as long as each tag has a unique number. There are 8 lines available on the permit, so if the lotto utilizes more than 8 tag-out devices, you can add additional pages to the permit. If this is the case, then be sure to number the pages. On the permit, write down the equipment lock ID for each lockout device. If no lockout device will be used, place NA in these spaces. Later on in the procedure, you will want to ensure that the equipment lock ID matches up with the proper tag number. On each line of the permit where a tag number is listed, write down the location of the energy isolating device which is being lottoed in the space provided. Examples of locations are main cabinet, talk box, etc. On each line of the permit where a tag number is listed, write down the isolation type and point for each energy isolation device which is being lottoed. An example of this is circuit breaker, CB1, etc. On each line of the permit where a tag number is listed, write down the isolation position of each energy isolating device which is being lottoed. Examples of the isolation position are breaker off, breaker open, breaker racked out, or valve lock shut. Write down the permit number and tag number on each tagout device used in the lotto spaces provided. These numbers need to match the numbers on the permit. In the isolation type and isolation point spaces of each tagout device used, write down the name of the equipment used and its isolation position for the lotto. These descriptions need to match the corresponding spaces on the lotto permit. Having the words and the numbers match the permit is what makes these tagout devices and lockout devices singularly identifiable. Next, the authorized employee needs to determine the appropriate method for checking the zero energy of the system. The authorized employee will then secure the equipment in accordance with the equipment shutdown procedure. The authorized employee will manipulate the energy isolating devices to the lottoed position. An authorized employee will then apply the lockout devices and tagout devices to the energy isolating devices which were just manipulated. After applying each lockout device and tagout device, the authorized employee will annotate on the tag that this is a permit lotto by checking that box. then initial in the placed by and write the date in the spaces provided. The authorized employee will then initial the LOTO permit in the placed by box for that lockout device and tagout device. Repeat for each line of the permit in which a tag number is used. The authorized employee will then place the keys for each lockout device in the lockbox and apply the control lock to the lockbox. A second authorized employee will verify that the lockout device and the tagout device have been applied to the correct energy isolating device. Also, this person will verify that the energy isolating device is LOTO'd in the correct position. The verifier also needs to check that the correct tag is associated with the correct lock and permit number as identified on the permit. Once verified, the second authorized employee will initial the verified by space on the tagout device and on the permit. If there was an authorized contractor employee, that person could perform this second check. An authorized employee will verify zero energy, then initial the zero energy space on the permit.
Zero energy is verified.
Any special instructions that may exist should be written in the space provided by the authorized employee. After the LOTO is properly applied, second checked, and the zero energy has been verified, a final review of the permit should be made, and then the authorized employee needs to print, sign their name, and date the authorized employee acceptance on the permit. At this point, the equipment is isolated from all energy sources and rendered inoperative. The equipment is now in the correct condition to be worked on. In other words, barriers are now in place. Now any person who needs to be protected by this barrier must become part of the LOTO to ensure the barriers remain effective. So any person who will be working on or around the equipment which is LOTO'd or could be harmed if the LOTO was inadvertently removed and the equipment was started must become an affected employee. This is a person who will be protected by the LOTO. Affected employees shall obtain the LOTO permit for the LOTO which will be protecting them and do the following. First, they should familiarize themselves with the boundaries of the LOTO and ensure understanding of how the LOTO is protecting themselves. This can be accomplished with help from the authorized employee.
Everything is de-energized and you're good to go.
Then the affected employee needs to print their name, company name, accepted signature, personal lock ID, and date applied in the spaces provided on the permit addendum, which is in the back of the permit. The affected employee will then place their personal lock, which has the same ID as was annotated on the LOTO permit addendum, onto the lockbox and maintain possession of the key. An authorized employee then needs to review the LOTO permit addendum and verify that each affected employee completed the applicable portions of the permit and placed their personal lock onto the lockbox. At this point, the affected employees may safely work on the equipment knowing that it cannot be inadvertently started. When each affected employee is finished with their work on the system, they need to remove their personal lock from the lockbox and sign the LOTO permit addendum in the area labeled Released Signature and complete the date released. Once an affected employee signs off of the LOTO, they are not allowed to put themselves in a situation where they are relying on the LOTO for protection. If they need protection from the LOTO again, they must sign back onto the LOTO permit addendum and reapply their personal lock to the lockbox. When work on the equipment has been completed and it needs to be returned to service, the authorized employee who will be removing the LOTO shall ensure that all affected employees have removed their personal locks from the lockbox and have signed off the LOTO permit addendum. The authorized employee will then remove the control lock from the lockbox and obtain the keys to each of the equipment locks. The authorized employee will then remove the lockout devices and the tagout devices from each energy isolating device which is part of the LOTO being removed. After the devices are removed, the authorized employee may then manipulate the energy isolating devices to the appropriate positions. The authorized employee needs to initial the permit on the space labeled removed by for each lockout device and tagout device which was removed. When the authorized employee who is removing the LOTO is satisfied that the work is complete and the LOTOed equipment is ready to be safely returned to service, and all affected employees have signed off on the LOTO and have removed their locks from the lockbox, they need to print their name, sign, and date the area of the LOTO permit which is labeled Authorized Employee Removal. If the equipment is to be returned to service, the authorized employee will start the equipment in accordance with the startup procedure. Finally, file the completed permit in the LOTO binder and discard the tags.
This video has defined some important terms regarding the Iberdrola Renewables LOTO program and has demonstrated application of a simple LOTO and a permit LOTO.